Welcome, welcome, everybody. Welcome to another Community Fit, and in particular, a Adjusting to Change Toolkit class, the ACT program. And we're here today to talk about nervous system regulation stuff. I'm your host, James, and this week we're going to talk about compassion. Can I get a show of hands of anyone who this might be your very first class with an ACT program? Go ahead and send up either an emoji or, whatever that might be. Um, and looks like everyone has been here. Cool. Awesome. So, this week we're going to talk about, we're working our way up to compassion. But first, we're going to revisit some of the mindfulness stuff, some of the toolkit stuff, and then kind of work our way into the compassion talk. I've got some notes today to keep myself on track, mostly because compassion is a practice that I have been practicing more myself. I'm really good at talking about it from like this generalized conceptual thing and something I teach and I practice as needed, for lack of a better word. But as like a guiding principle, I'm just gonna let you know right now, compassion in practice is so hard. It's so hard to practice compassion. So I wanted to say that because, I'm going to reference some notes. My notes are down here. I'm going to reference some notes now and again, and it's to keep me on track of some things that are really important in my compassion practice. And also to let you know that you are going to get it wrong a lot. You are going to fail at compassion so much. And just know that you're not alone. And just know that that's, I think, probably the point of a compassion practice is to just like dive into it, however that looks for you. Put in your reps, keep practicing. And then, really, I think the point of a compassion practice, specifically as it's like pointed outwards at other people, is it's a mirror back to you to go, oh, what I really actually need to be practicing is self compassion, even through my compassion practice for other people. So, we're going to work our way up there. But first, we're going to go over some of the stuff we've been working our way up to because both mindfulness and moments of joy, moments of pleasure, somatic toolkit work, like what we covered last week, is going to be like so pivotal to a compassion practice. And I'm hoping to kind of make that clear as we go forward. Before we get started, and I'll say this again at the end, just a reminder that there will be no class next Friday. So we do have class on Wednesday. So we have our midweek desk stretch on Wednesday, same time, normal thing. But on Friday, no class. So we'll pick up again the following Friday. I'll remind you again at the end, but just so I don't forget, wanted to put that in there. Okay, mindfulness. Mindfulness, as we've been practicing it, is the key to everything. It is the thing that unlocks the rest of the practices. Mindfulness, as we've been talking about it, comes from the work of Dr. Ellen Langer. So it's that empirically studied language around mindfulness. There's a lot of different ways to look at it, but mindfulness, as we've been talking about it, as we are collaboratively understanding it, is mindfulness is an awareness of context and variability, the ability to notice what is going on around me. How does it affect me inside? How does what is going on inside of me affect how I am interfacing with, moving through, navigating, responding, building relationships with the world around me, people, places, behaviors, work, whatever it might be. Particularly because we're at the holiday time, and this ACT program segment is all about holiday stuff. How does the change of season affect me? How do holidays affect me? How does a disruption to everyday normal practice affect me? How does being around that uncle, that aunt, that coworker, specifically at this time of year, affect me? How does the rainy weather outside affect me? And then what is my mindset? What is my experience? What is my experiential intelligence? the way my body is metabolizing what is going on around me, shifting that mindset to be better or worse. Meaning, do I look at the obstacles in front of me, the changes in front of me, as possibility for something new, as an invitation to explore different aspects, to self-soothe, to resource, to take care of myself in new and fresh ways? Or does what is going on inside of me, how the world is affecting me, whatever that might be, does it negate all of that? And does it turn everything into more problems, more to do, stuff you don't want to do? Are you having a glass half empty or a glass half full moment? Because at the end of the day, that's not a reality. That's not something happening to you. That is a mindset. That is a perception. That is a behavioral process. So there's a collaboration in there. And mindfulness, as we're talking about it, is that pause, the like stopping. It's like a matrix moment, a stopping of time and space to allow yourself the moment to check in. That's what mindfulness is. And there's lots of different ways to cultivate that. We've been looking at it from a body-based perspective, but you can also do it through meditation. You can also do it through mantra. You can do it through affirmations. You can do it through conversation, right? That's the whole point of talk therapy. It is a mindfulness practice. There's lots of different ways to look at that, but that's what it is. Shifting gears to what we covered last week. Last week, we talked about the toolkit, and the toolkit are somatic practices, meaning body-based practices, to help regulate your nervous system. Done in the moment, they can serve as self-care, as a triage, a moment to self-soothe, to make your nervous system feel better, right? The same practices practiced over time, quite literally, build fortitude and resilience within your nervous system. Fortitude being the ability to just endure more, that there's more um, capability to have like water off of a duck's back, right? That you're not penetrated by as much, right? That you can move through life with a little more ease because things don't seem as big. Resilience is the ability to pick yourself up when the big stuff has knocked you down. So fortitude and resilience, similar like flip sides of the coin, but these same practices quite literally build capacity in your nervous system when practiced over time to make your bucket bigger, right? What were the practices? The practices, number one is breath work. We have an orientation or sensory foraging. We have therapeutic touch. We had a movement category. And then we also had a vocalization category. For a moment, I was like, what even is your own work, James? So, different buckets. We had some different exercises, but I encourage you to Google, to pick up books, listen to podcasts, watch YouTube, take classes elsewhere to help you fill up the buckets as needed. Not all of the buckets are going to be for you. Remember, those same practices can be really good for your nervous system, and this for someone's nervous system out there, and those same practices might be really not good for another person's nervous system. Meaning, I can teach one breath work, and for you, it might be really good. You might get some self-soothing, some fortitude and resilience building, and you over there might have the opposite. It might be triggering. It might actually not be accessible to you, or you might just have a resistance to it. Neither one of you or you is right. It's just a reality of what is. And because I'm not working with each one of you individually, I can't tell you what those things are. It requires some self-exploration, some mindfulness to pay attention to context. What are we doing? And do I like it? Because variability. Variability means my nervous system soothes when I do this thing. I feel better when I do this thing. Or my nervous system does not soothe when I do this practice. Things actually aren't as good, right? So there's a little bit of ownership that goes along with this, and compassion is going to be holding hands right along with that. So let's go over some toolkit stuff. And for the next few weeks after this, that's sort of where we're going to start off. And the invitation at the beginning of those classes is going to be for you to practice whatever nervous system work works best for you. For today, I'm going to kind of do an abbreviated walkthrough. First practice is going to be breath work. The breath work technique I'm going to propose today is physiological sigh. If we think back to last week, that's a double inhale followed by a single exaggerated exhalation. Inhale, inhale, exhale. Big inhale number one, full inhale number two, exaggerated exhalation. If you can go in through the nose, out through the mouth, all the better. But really just make the practice your own. Let's do three of them just for the sake of time. If breath work is one of the things that works really well for you, maybe just stay there and continue that, right? So here we go. I'll demo it once. Together, we're going to do it 3 times. Physiological sigh. Inhale, inhale, exhale. Together, 3 times. Two more. One more. And just notice how your nervous system responds to that. I feel a little more settled. I feel a little more relaxed. You might feel the same. You might feel different. Next category is orientation or sensory foraging. Again, that bucket can be filled with a lot of different things. The practice I'm gonna propose us doing today is visual orientation. So I'm just gonna start looking around the room. What's above me? To the left, below, right, behind. And I'm gonna slow it down. And I'm just gonna notice the things in the room. Like there's a wall and a light and a shelf with a vase and some books on it. There's a camera and plants and a mirror and a wall and a door. And I can keep looking around, or I can visually look for something that's bringing me a little bit of interest, joy, that just feels good to look at. For me, I know it's behind me. There's a window out here that looks to the street, and I can see the rain. And I actually really love the clouds and the rain and all of that. So for some of you, looking at clouds and rain is actually going to be sort of a downer moment. Like you wouldn't look at that as something that sparks joy. For me, and for several of you out there, I'm sure watching the rain brings you joy. So spend a little moment just orienting to your space or intaking something that's bringing you some joy. I also have some physical orientation going on right now. I'm sure he'll come on screen later, but Bob the dog is down here and he's like, pet me. So I'm doing petting my dog, looking out at the rain. Just notice how your personal nervous system responds to whatever that is. Now, category number one is breathwork. Category number two is sensory foraging. Category number three is therapeutic touch. Therapeutic touch is just placing your hands or a heated something or other somewhere on your body that feels really good. It can also be tapping, it can be brushing, it can be whatever you need, right? For me, I'm going to bring my hands together. I'm even going to show you a different one. I'm going to take my right hand and put it underneath like a left armpit area. And then I'm going to take my left hand and just kind of hold here. It's almost like you're hugging yourself. Now, you can do this, or you can touch your chest or tap on your forehead or little warmth on the jaw or belly might be nice. Or for you, therapeutic touch might not be what you need today. Maybe you are back doing the breathwork thing. Last category, or second to last category, is movement. I'm going to do a little right and left rocking as our proposed practice for today. In fact, I'm even going to close my eyes. I'm going to have a moment for myself here. Movement is one of my personal favorites. I'm going to slow it down. So, like, glacially slow. I'm just going to notice my nervous system. Automatically, I can feel my body wanting to go into a yawn, which is a good nervous system response. I can feel my body wanting to do this slow, long, exaggerated exhale. If it were me, I'd probably spend a lot more time doing that thing. Last one is vocalization. For today, it's going to be a hum, closed mouth hum. I'm going to couple the last two because, again, I'm just going to follow what my nervous system feels like it might want. I'm going to do the rocking side to side, and I'm going to add in the hum. That's what it feels like my body needs for the next 30 seconds. I encourage you to find the practice, the thing your body needs, which is likely different than what my body needs. Here we go. Just do a check-in, just noticing. Okay. Now, if you're just here for the practices, feel free to continue to do your practice. This might be enough for you. Some of you might want to sign off now and go, got it, got what I needed today. This is your time. This is your practice. What the rest of us are going to do is shift gears into a conversation and some practical tips around how to practice compassion. And like I said at the beginning of this class, it just might be like when you actually are making compassion an intentional practice in your daily life. It might be one of the hardest things you choose to do, right? It is so difficult for a lot of reasons, right? Our nervous system is geared towards othering people, right? It's a biologic thing that our body does, ancestral even. These people behave differently than me, look differently than me, are from a different place, are like, there's a biologic bias to other people. And we have to work against that because way back then, other people that looked different, were from a different place, behaved differently than us, were trouble. Our village, our little tribe could be attacked. And so there's this impulse to go, you're different than me. What you're doing is different than what I would do, right? We also have a bias towards negativity to keep us safe. Oh, that person is doing something bad. What I do is right. What I'm doing is wrong, and I should be punished for this. I should have a sense of shame. I should, whatever it is, there is a bias towards that happens in our nervous system to keep us safe. And so when we are practicing compassion and trying to be more expansive, we're brushing up against some of those like deeply embedded biologic processes which is nature, right? We're also brushing up against some nurture stuff that can sound and look a lot of different ways. Compassion, and we're going to talk about this, has some boundary setting, has some physically removing yourself from situation, things. That might be from relationships with people. That might be choosing not to go to that party, that dinner, that whatever it is, right? It's also got space, making space where you can for people with vastly different opinions than you, vastly different lifestyles than you, vastly different wants, needs, conversational styles than you. And that's really difficult from a nurture perspective to hold space for that, to welcome that, to quite literally choose to hold that space for people. So we're brushing up against like nervous system impulse and conditioning. So giving yourself space to get it wrong and go, if you choose, I'm practicing compassion as part of a toolkit, an overall lifestyle shift to generate fortitude and resilience in myself and to have these self-soothing triage moments. Now, as I said at the beginning, as some of you may be joining late, I am currently really, really in the practice of compassion right now, and it's hard, right? There's not a destination. There's not a way to get an A plus in it. It's a daily practice. And so in alignment with that, I've made some notes, and that's what I'm going to keep referring to just to keep myself on track with this. Now, number one, I like to start off with a definition. What is compassion? Compassion for me is probably the best I've heard it, is from a somatic therapist, activist, therapist, and their name is Prentice Hemphill. And how they describe language compassion is empathy plus action. Empathy, the ability to zoom out of that in the moment experience that you're having, to remove your personal self-reflective lens from a moment, step into someone else's shoes, look at this thing from a different point of view, and hold space in your heart as much as you do in your brain to ponder an experience and then take action. Taking action to either support, help, remove, fix something, love on something, whatever that looks like. And each moment is going to need something a little bit different, right? But that's what compassion is. There is like a pause in reaction, gut reaction. That's why mindfulness is so important. And practicing those pauses and being aware of your nervous system state, being aware of your mental state. Because without that, you're never going to get there. You're never going to get to compassion without including some version of mindfulness. Because mindfulness is, again, that pause on the next thing in order to assess. So it's that, but it doesn't end there. It's not, oh, I'm compassionate and I'm thinking about it and I'm pondering it and it's a philosophy. Compassion actually has an action with it. And that's the hard thing. I've paused, I've assessed. Well, what's the action? What's the action I'm going to take next? Is it how I talk to someone, how I talk to myself, what I do for someone, what I don't do for someone, right? Sometimes restraint is the hard thing. So empathy plus action. Now, here we go. I think some of the most important work you can do around compassion cultivation is to set the intention of why. Why would you even choose to practice compassion? So you might want to take notes. You might want to just think about it. And again, this is just some stuff to talk about, a way to trickle into compassion cultivation. Setting an intention, right? Here's some good questions. What is bringing you to a what is bringing you to a compassion practice today? Why even do it? Like, what's the point of it for you today? And it might change day to day. Like, why should I be practicing compassion? What do you want for yourself out of the compassion practice, right? So it might sound like, and again, this would be my language. I want for myself, the reason I would practice compassion, right, is more grace and space for myself and other people. Like, I don't want to crowd anyone with my responses. I don't need to add complexity on top of an already complex world. I want space. And I want to navigate that space with some element of grace for other people and myself, right? And not needing to prove myself right, not needing to prove anyone else wrong, just grace, grace and space. That might be what you want, might be something different. What do you want for your life? What would a compassion practice generate for your life? And to get really clear about what that might be. And then maybe most importantly is like, what do you have to offer the world today? Some days you might have a lot of capacity for compassion, and some days that capacity might be this big, right? I was just talking with someone earlier today. It's like if you woke up on time, refreshed, had a good breakfast, the kids were behaving well, no traffic into work, you're going to have a nice dinner with some friends tonight. Like your capacity for compassion might be big. On the other hand, you might have had like a fight with your spouse last night. The kids are behaving like kids. You woke up late, you got a bad meeting, and you just got a lot of work to do, right? Maybe you got a headache on top of all of it. Probably not a lot of space. So today you might not have as much to offer, and to be compassionate and aware around that, it doesn't have to look the same every day, right? So getting really clear with the intention. Now, what what are some elements of compassion? Like what does that even mean to have a compassion practice? Well, number one, it's to be mindful, mindful of context and variability in yourself and other people, right? That things can change, and to be mindful of how you're behaving in the moment, how you're being affected, and how that's affecting your behavior. So being mindful of yourself and your situation, right? In all the ways we've been practicing it, being being accepting of other people, of other scenarios, and accepting when you can't be accepting of other people. We'll get there, right? By no means is this like embrace your abusers, right? That's not this conversation, right? Accepting of the things you can accept, and also accepting that there are going to be things that you can't accept. And that's fine too. That's when boundaries will come in. Helpful and supportive where you can be, really understanding what might be a positive next step for someone. Patient, being patient and inclusive, and probably most so grateful. Grateful for what other people have done, grateful for what you can do, grateful for your capacity, grateful for life, grateful. Now, how do we get there? Well, number one, it might be, right, empathy, which is putting yourself in other people's shoes, like really being cultivating the ability to go, I don't know exactly what's going on with that other person. I don't know why they're making the choices they're making. I don't know why they're saying the things they're doing. I don't know why they've done the actions they've done, but I'm sure it made perfect sense to them. I'm sure there was a pathway that got them to that decision point. I don't know what it is, and I don't actually need to know what it is. I just have to know that it makes sense to them. And how am I going to create choice in my response? Stopping self-referencing. What does that mean? Self-referencing is, well, I wouldn't do that. I would do it differently. That doesn't make sense to me. What could they be thinking in that way? To pause on the self-referencing, listening generously, like the ability to just listen, listen without interrupting, listen without needing to justify, just listening, right? And then practicing radical self-care. Radical self-care means getting at the root, right? Radical doesn't mean like extreme and bananas and like absurdity. Radical means self-care to the core. That's sometimes bubble baths, that's sometimes shopping sprees. More likely, it's somatic practices. More likely, it's rest. More likely, it's finding joy in the moment, slowing down or speeding up, radical self-care. Now, talked a little bit about boundaries, right? We're going to go back to Prentice Hemphill here. Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. And so if we are practicing boundary setting, that may mean that I need to be close to you, right? Boundaries don't mean shutting off. Boundaries mean I need a smaller distance between you and me. I need to spend more time with you. Or boundaries could mean I actually can't spend much to any time with that person. And so if you're like, I love all of this, James, but I have that uncle or that aunt or that coworker, and I just can't with this. It's too triggering. It's too much. I hear what you're saying. I'm doing the breath work practices. I'm doing all of that. I'm accepting. I'm listening. I'm doing all the things. And yet I'm still getting triggered by this person. Maybe the most compassionate thing you can do for that person and yourself is to physically remove yourself from that relationship. Meaning, it might take you not going to dinner. It might take you not going to the party. It might take you only showing up for X amount of time and then leaving, right? We don't have to abuse ourselves to practice compassion, right? Compassion is what do I need here? Empathy for myself to also take action for self support, and simultaneously being empathetic to other people and taking action to support them. Sometimes that requires some version of a boundary there. Now, I have said a lot. Think about the one or two things that are pinging around in your brain. And where does that apply to the holidays? To the family, to the friends, to the coworkers, to whatever that might be. And practice one or two things. And I warned you at the beginning and I warned you in the middle. Hard. Compassion as a practice has a lot of elements. But if you're taking care of yourself, being mindful, practicing when you can, titrating in those compassion practices, I have faith and trust that you're going to get it right in the way that you need to get it right now. So I'll stick around for whatever questions you got. Thank you all for joining. Remember, we are off next Friday. No class next Friday, but we'll pick up the week after that. And the topic is going to be gratitude, really practicing gratitude. So think about this week and next week. How are you going to practice some compassion for other people and for yourself? Appreciate you all. Thank you so much. I see that we've got one question here. Is this compassion for self or others? Both. Both. Do you have any suggestions to stop self-referencing? I think number one, so the question is, do you have any suggestions to stop self-referencing? Number one is going to be mindfulness, to just pay attention to when you do self-reference, right? Well, I wouldn't do it like that. Like, just begin to actively listen to how you're talking and like in your own body, the interpersonal dialogue and the interpersonal dialogue, how what you're actually saying to other people. And when you catch yourself self-referencing or whatever other unsavory behavior that you might have, this is a big one, right? Don't beat yourself up for doing it. That's when self-compassion is going to kick in, right? I've noticed I've done this thing that's not very compassionate. Oh, I'm a bad person. Oh, I shouldn't do. Oh, look at me mess it up again, right? Instead to go, oh, look at that. Look at that thing that I just did. What might be something to do differently? Or why did I do that? Right? To get really clear on, well, how have I been conditioned to respond like that? And to get really clear on when you're doing it, mindfulness, creating more pauses in there so that you have more choice, more behavioral choices. And that would be probably the lowest common denominator there. Again, not very good at it. Oh, love the nails. Thank you so much. My sister and I were playing around with them. These are my wicked, like Emerald City nails. You know, 'tis the season. Okay, anyone? What's the last name of Prentice? Prentice Hemphill. Hemphill. Prentice Hemphill. They have podcast series you can look for. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. And they wrote a book this year. Amazing. Their work is amazing. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm out of here. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.